Hello and welcome. For anyone who has collected G.I. Joe, seen the cartoons or read the comics, will be aware of the character of Destro and that he was a Scottish laird and the head of Mars Industries, which was a company involved in weapon research and development. He was also a member of the terrorist organisation known as Cobra, as well as being Cobra's main weapon supplier. But did you know that across the pond in the UK and Europe, Destro's backstory was very different to his American counterpart? So in this video today, I'll provide you with some of the history and backstory behind Action Forces Destro. I hope you enjoy the video. Please remember to like, comment and subscribe to help my channel grow. Thank you. Now let's get on with the video. It all starts back in the early 1980s when a UK toy manufacturer called Palitoy released a scaled down version of their popular award-winning Action Man series. This was to be known as Action Force, and thanks to a licensing deal signed between Palitoy and Hasbro, Palitoy were able to incorporate some of Hasbro's new G.I. Joe, a real American hero, into their Action Force toy line. Vehicles such as Steeler in the Mobat, the Vamp and the Rapid Fire motorcycle. These would all be repainted and repackaged as Action Force, and there would also be a comic strip in IPC Magazine's weekly comic called Battle. This is where we'd get stories about Action Force and the Red Shadows as they battle against each other, similar to the G.I. Joe comic that was released by Marvel. The Action Force stories would prove so popular amongst its readers, IPC Magazines would eventually change the name of the comic to Battle Action Force. With the success of Action Force, Palitoy wanted to expand on the range by adding some newly designed figures and vehicles, as well as additional figures and vehicles from Hasbro's G.I. Joe. And this is where we meet the Red Jackal, and many of you will notice that it looks a lot like Destro, and that's because it is Destro. He was one of the many Joes that were incorporated into Palitoy's Action Force. Palitoy would also add the Red Shadow emblem to his chest, and for some reason I recall his face was slightly different, but it was a long time ago and I no longer own the figures, so I can't really compare. Should anybody know, by all means please leave a comment below. The Red Jackal was supplied with the Red Shadow's all-terrain vehicle, the Hyena, which, as you can see, is a repaint of Hasbro's Hiss Tank. Battle Action Force would also provide data files on characters, which would give us some basic history and information about them. We would get one for the Red Jackal, but it didn't give much away about his past. It wouldn't be till Action Force released the story of the Red Jackal that we would find more about the Red Jackal's past. The Red Jackal. Born in the Baltic port of Riga, the capital of Latvia, Anton Novikov had a restless youth. Bored of his surroundings, he would often get involved in street fights just to relieve the boredom of day-to-day life. And like most teenagers, Anton could not wait till he was old enough to join the army. So at 16, Anton was called up for national service in the Soviet army and was posted to a depot base just outside Moscow. And this is where he would soon discover his natural talent for driving. His driving skills would soon get him noticed by his superiors, who, while impressed with his driving, thought the Latvian to be a little bit too wild for the Soviet army. Anton, of course, had little to no interest in the Soviet army's doctrine, as all he wanted to do was drive cars. So, one day, while bored out of his mind in electron party politics, Anton looks out a window and he spots one of the Commissar's cars parked outside. He had heard that these were the fastest cars in the motor pool and started to hatch a plan to take the car out for a joyride. Later that night, Anton sneaks out to the Commissar's car and quietly manages to jump-start it. He then calmly drives out of the base, knowing that he won't be challenged while in a Commissar's car. Upon leaving the base, Anton drives towards the Moscow highway so he can see just how fast this car can go. But unfortunately for Anton, his antics have not gone unnoticed, as the missing car has been reported to the GRU, the Soviet military police. And the GRU had set up multiple roadblocks to catch Anton, and upon his return to barracks, Anton was caught and placed under arrest. He was then sent to Moscow to face a court-martial, and in the hearing things did not look good for Anton, as he was charged with assaulting 2 GRU officers as well as taking of an unauthorised vehicle off base. It was looking like the gulags for Anton, until a senior commander stepped in to defend Anton. The general says the boy shows initiative and that he was impressed with how he handled himself and the car, and that he would take him on as his own personal driver. Anton could not believe his good luck. One minute he's about to be sent to the gulags, the next he's been promoted to corporal and is now the personal driver for a top-ranking general. Anton soon settles into his new role, and one day is given a mission to escort the general to an international conference in Finland. While on the way to the conference, the convoy is attacked by men in red uniforms. It's the Red Shadows. Immediately the lead car is taken out, leaving only Anton and the general left. Thinking quick, he puts the car into high gear and drives through the shadows, heading towards a river he'd spotted filled with floating logs. Aiming the car at the logs, he jumps off the bank with the general screaming at him, "Have you lost your mind?" Seconds later, Anton tells the general he can open his eyes now, as they have managed to land safely on the logs, and the logs are acting like a raft, taking them down the river away from the Red Shadows. Once back at the base, Anton is called to a meeting with senior Soviet officers. It turns out that they were so impressed with how he handled himself during the last mission that they wanted to put him forward as a representative of the Soviet Army to join a new multi-international counter-terrorist strike force known as Action Force. Action Force had been created to combat the threat of the new terrorist organisation known as the Red Shadows and their evil leader, the Baron Ironblood, and that they were looking for people just like him. Anton eagerly accepts and is told all Action Force members have a code name, and perhaps his should be like Wolf due to his Baltic background. But Anton already has another name in mind, a similar animal from a warmer climate: Jackal. Anton arrives at the Action Force training camp located somewhere in Turkey, and upon arrival soon meets some of his fellow recruits. These were soldiers like him who had been selected from various armies from around the world to join Action Force. But Anton didn't have time for pleasantries, as all he wanted to do was get behind the wheel and drive these new Action Force vehicles he had heard so much about. Anton soon begins his training, learning how to handle the Action Force vehicles and putting them through their paces, when one day he comes across one of the new Z-Force patrol jeeps and couldn't resist taking it out for a spin. He's about to get in the jeep when another trooper shouts over to him, saying he'll join him. The trooper comes running over to the jeep and is about to get in when suddenly Anton punches the man, knocking him to the ground and shouting, "No, I travel alone," before jumping in the jeep and driving off. Nearby, a group of officers who are monitoring the training all witness the incident. They all agree that Anton is a driving genius, although his codename suits him a little too well. It has been noticed that Anton is a bit of a lone wolf, preparing his own company and often going out for long solo drives through the mountains. The officers make a decision that when he returns to the base, they will have a word with the young Latvian and try to rein him in. Later that day, Anton is driving through the mountains, putting the Z-Force jeep through its paces. But unknown to Anton, he was being watched by a lone figure hidden in the mountain's strange cone-like hills. The observer speaks into a comlink, reporting that they have a lone driver and has been spotted heading towards the gorge. Nearby, in an ancient mountain fortress left over from the Ottoman Empire, the message is received and the order is given to prepare to attack. The terrorist organisation known as the Red Shadows had terrorist cells located all over the globe, and in charge of this particular cell was a local Turk known as the Sultan. The Sultan contacts his master, the leader of the Red Shadows, the Baron Ironblood, and reports that they have been watching the Action Force training base, and that they have been monitoring a driver that is often seen leaving the base on solo drives, and that he has a plan in place to capture the driver. The Baron gives the order to execute the plan and demands that they bring the vehicle and the man in it back to him. Meanwhile, Anton approaches the gorge and is impressed with the jeep's speed and armour. However, he does think the jeep could do with some more offensive armament. As he enters the gorge, he notices up ahead that some vultures have been disturbed, when suddenly he spots two vehicles speeding towards him. He notices the colour of the vehicles and its occupants. Red. It was the Red Shadows again. Opening fire as they approach, Anton instinctively puts the jeep into handbrake turn, and putting the pedal to the metal, he floors it back out of the gorge with the Red Shadows in pursuit. As he approaches the entrance of the gorge, he can see more Red Shadow vehicles blocking his exit. And with both exits blocked, he has no escape, until he spots a flat rock that could act as a ramp and get him out of the gorge. Speeding up, he veers towards the rock and by some miracle makes the jump, evading the Red Shadows for now. The Red Shadows report back to the Sultan that the target has managed to evade capture and that he is heading south with Red Shadow units in pursuit, and that they have also recovered the driver's ID tag when he jumped out of the gorge, and that his code name was Jackal. The Sultan laughs. Soon it will be a dead Jackal, as he and some other Red Shadows start putting on Z-Force uniforms. Still being pursued by the Red Shadows hot on his tail, Anton is looking for a way back to the base. When up ahead he spots a Z-Force patrol heading towards him. At last some help, he thinks. But as they get closer he spots the flash of red under the Z-Force uniforms. It's another trap. Again, thinking quickly, he aims towards the gorge in an attempt to jump it and escape, but it is too late. The Sultan orders his men to open fire and take him down in midair. Anton is hit multiple times and loses control of the jeep as it skids off the road and plummets 40 metres down to the bottom of the gorge. The Sultan orders his men to go and check on the jeep and its driver, and they report back and tell him that the jeep is totaled and the driver is barely alive, as he has heavy blood loss with multiple fractures and a possible broken neck. The Sultan orders them to leave the body to the local scavengers, when suddenly a familiar voice crackles over the intercom. The Baron had been monitoring the whole situation. He tells the Sultan that the Jackal is too good to be left to the scavengers, and if there is any flicker of life in him, to retrieve his body from the wreckage and bring it back. The Sultan intercedes and says, "But the man is beyond medical help." The Baron tells him that he may be beyond medical help, but he possesses the technology and the specialists to save him. Later that day, Z-Force, having sent out search parties, eventually find the wreckage of the jeep, but no sign of Anton. With the state of the jeep and the amount of blood loss everywhere, no one could have walked away from that wreckage alive, leaving Z-Force wondering who took his body and for what reason. Meanwhile, back at the Baron's hideout, Anton's broken body arrives, still clinging to life. The Baron immediately orders his doctors and scientists to save him at all costs. First of all, Anton undergoes 12 hours of advanced laser surgery, which is then followed by days of painful bioelectronic surgery. The weeks pass by till one day the Baron makes an announcement to his Red Shadows. He tells them that he has created an all-new terrain vehicle called the Hyena, and with its driver, a bionic named the Red Jackal. His image appears on the monitors dressed in black armour wearing a metal mask. You see, the Baron's doctors and scientists had managed to save Anton, rebuilding him into a bionic man with enhanced strength, electrovolt capabilities and enhanced vision. He had also been subjected to the Baron's mind control and was now a loyal servant of the Baron. And that was the Red Jackal's backstory. I thought it was a good story full of lots of adventure and excitement, and I especially liked the fact he was a member of Action Force before he became the Red Jackal. He would continue to do his master's bidding, if only for a short amount of time, as by 1985 the Red Jackal would go through yet another transformation, taking on a new identity and a new master. And to find out what happened, you'll have to wait for part 2. So that's all from me for today, so thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please feel free to leave any comments below, and until next time, stay safe and Yo Joe!